And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, Donald Trump is soaring in the polls. Now, according to the latest national CBS News, New York Times poll, Donald Trump is leading the Republican field with 35% of the vote, 19 points ahead of his closest opponent, and that's Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And in the all-important primary state of South Carolina, a brand-new Fox News poll is also showing Trump garnering 35% of the vote with a similar commanding 20-point lead over his rivals. Now, despite the showing of Trump, well, the RNC loyalty pledge and all of that, and leading in every poll, Donald Trump is once again hinting that he might think about running third party if he is not treated with respect. Watch this.
Are you going to break this pledge?
I think it's highly unlikely unless they break the pledge to me, because it's a two-way street.
What does that mean?
They said they will be honorable. So far, I can't tell you if they are, but the establishment is not exactly being very good to me. If they don't treat me with a certain amount of decorum and respect, if they don't treat me as the front runner, by far the front runner, if the playing field is not level, then certainly all options are open. But that's nothing I want to do.
Joining us now, author of the brand new book. It's a novel. It's called Duplicity. Former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. You know, it's interesting how this loyalty pledge seems to work one way. Everybody wanted Donald Trump to sign on to it. He did. And then you have people like Lindsey Graham, who is like at 0% nationally, 2% in his home state of South Carolina, telling we should tell Donald Trump to go straight to hell. I kind of understand a little bit how he's feeling. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think you see a lot of frustration and you see a lot of fear. I think that for people who are based in the Washington establishment, the idea of Trump as a potential nominee is almost unthinkable. And I think that what you're seeing reflected. I think what Trump is saying is, look, if this thing falls apart, they could turn him into Goldwater. He could end up being a nominee who doesn't do very well because the party fragments and shatters. And I think his view is that's not why he's running. I think Trump has actually come to believe that he could actually be president. And I think that's not where he started back in January. He started, I think, sort of to see whether or not this would all work. But now it's changing, and I think one of his points is valid. That is, if you are the front runner for 6 or 7 months, and you're the front runner in national surveys by 20 points, and you have the scale of resources he has, you at least deserve some level of respect, even if people disagree with specific ideas, and you can have an argument about the specific ideas. And I think this is going to be a very complicated period for the Republican Party.
You know, every Republican was so quick to condemn him. We have some poll numbers in Fox's own South Carolina poll. Well, it's a 4-day average. 2 of the days were after he made the remarks, and his poll numbers went up 8 points. Rasmussen, a plurality of likely voters favor Trump's position on a temporary moratorium. Survey USA of the Central Valley in California and San Diego, a majority there, also agree with Trump's proposal, and they voted for Obama in the last election over Mitt Romney. So obviously Washington views this one way, and the American people are viewing it another way. What's your reaction?
Yeah, look, but part of this whole story is that the country increasingly believes that Washington is an island of incompetence and corruption that is weakening the entire country. And so you look, for example, at the continuing to unfold story of these 2 terrorists in Southern California. You start learning that they were apparently looking at shooting up the local high school as part of what they were doing. You learn that it was not at all what we were told last week. She was not the initial radical. The husband was the initial radical, and he was planning to kill people as early as 2012. Now, there's a story that I think is breaking tonight that, in fact, at one point, the counterterrorism people were looking at him, and they were told specifically not to look at him because of political interference on behalf of Muslim groups that scream when you approach things. Somebody's got at some point, raise the flag here and say, wait a second, you cannot interfere with law enforcement on behalf of some kind of phony protection. This
was an intelligence failure once again. There's no doubt about that at this point. We have enough information. They've been radicalized for years. Let me go to the Winthrop University poll, and this is of South Carolinians, and it shows that that some 67% support the idea that the government should conduct surveillance on Muslim mosques. That same poll, should the government create a database of all Muslims in the U.S., 48% say yes. Now, I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree. I'm just giving you opinions. Look at what Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, a Democrat, said about the percentage of Muslims that would use terrorism to advance the caliphate. Let's roll this.
We know that there is a small group, and we don't know how big that is. That can be anywhere between 5 and 20% from the people that I speak to, that Islam is their religion, and who have a desire for a caliphate and to institute that in any way possible, and in particular go after what they consider Western norms, our way of life.
1.6 billion Muslims, 5%, the low number. This is a Democratic Congresswoman saying this, between 5 and 20%. Doesn't that raise legitimate questions if we can't vet people coming into this country that may have that mentality that we've got to secure the homeland first?
Look, well, it's deeper than that. First of all, there are people already in the United States. There are people who are American citizens. Remember, the husband was an American citizen, born in Indiana. He's not an immigrant, and yet somehow he became isolated from American civilization and became a mortal enemy of American civilization. I'm trying to get the Congress to hold hearings to go to the very heart of this. We don't need an authorization for ISIS. We need an authorization for a worldwide war with Islamic supremacists, including in the United States, and we need to be very tough-minded. And my message to those Muslims who are concerned about hysteria is simple. You have an obligation to help clear out the mosques that are radical. You have an obligation to help turn in people who are planning terrorism. We need the help of every Muslim who would like to be accepted as an American to isolate and identify the terrorists. And I think that what we've gotten instead is the opposite. We have these organized groups that are trying to tell us to shut up, not talk about it, don't have the FBI look at it. And I think that's exactly wrong.
Well, 5% would be 60 million. That's the low side of what Loretta Sanchez is talking about. And we're talking about 240 million. That's a lot of radicalized people.
The percentage I was given of the recruiting pool in December of 2001 by the CIA was 3 to 5%, which at that time was 39 to 65 million. We have never under Bush and never under Obama had a serious strategy for dealing with this scale of insurgency and this scale of religiously inspired worldwide internet-based activity.
I have argued on this program that if Donald Trump would have cited James Clapper, our Director of National Intelligence, our Assistant FBI Director Steinbeck, James Comey, for example, any of these, General John Allen, who's the special envoy in charge of defeating ISIS, if he would have quoted their warnings, their admonitions about ISIS infiltrating the refugee population, I don't think it would be as controversial. I want to play these comments for you and ask you if you think that this is a good idea in light of what our intelligence officials are saying. Listen.
In Syria, the lack of our footprint on the ground in Syria, that the databases won't have the information we need. So it's not that we have a lack of process, it's there's a lack of information.
And that obviously raises grave concern as to being able to do proper background checks of the individuals coming into the country.
Yes.
I don't obviously put it past the likes of ISIL to infiltrate operatives among these refugees.
We can only query against that which we have collected. And so if someone has never made a ripple in the pond in Syria in a way that would get their identity or their interests reflected in our database, we can query our database till the cows come home, but we're not going to, there will be nothing show up because we have no record on that person.
We should be conscious of the potential that Daesh may attempt to embed agents within that population.
The chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee has said ISIS does have a plan to infiltrate the refugee population, and it happened in Paris. In light of that, if Donald Trump just said it differently and cited these officials, do you think this would even be an issue?
Well, of course, it'll be an issue because you have people on the left who refuse to believe any of this, and you have the New York Times, and you have all sorts of elites who are saying, oh, that's terrible, how can you say it? But I think you're putting your finger on the key turning point for the Trump campaign. He's now big enough, and he's been around long enough as a candidate, that he has to move up his game to being a presidential level game. What you just cited, had he put all that together and made that the forerunner to what he was going to say, you'd have had a totally different impact and a totally different effect. And he's going to have to learn, I think, to operate at that level if he's going to actually mature into being a nominee and a potentially serious candidate.
But you think he can go all the way?
Look, I think we're in a wide open country where who knows what's going to happen. I mean, you've got Rahm Emanuel now down to 18% approval with people demanding that he resign. You have Hillary Clinton burdened down by all of these ethics problems and email problems and you name it. We're in a different world, and I think it's very possible that you could end up with Trump going all the way. I think it's also possible that he won't get the nomination.
All right, so all the establishment Republicans, Lindsey Graham saying to Donald Trump, he can go straight to hell, and he can't even get 1% of the vote nationally, and they all make the prediction, oh, Donald Trump can't win in a general election. Well, if he was so easy to beat, why aren't they doing better against him?
Well, I think what you have is a situation where the country is dramatically alienated from the establishment. The country really wants somebody who's very tough. They want somebody who's going to kick in the door. Now, that may only be 40 or 45% of the Republican Party, but that may be a big enough base to win the nomination. And then the question gets to be, do you want to pull together as a team and try to win this thing, or do you want to turn Trump into Goldwater and have everybody pile on and try to beat him, in which case I suspect that he has a lot of options that people haven't thought through.
All right, and between Trump and Cruz, that's 51%. And you have a lot of people in this race that aren't showing up.
And then you've got to add in how Carson is doing, and now you're up into the 60s. I mean, the number of people voting for folks who are outside the establishment is the highest I've seen in my lifetime.
All right, Mr. Speaker, always good to see you. Thank you.